condition as provided herein, so as not to cause a blighting problem or adversely affect the public health or safety. Anything on 301?
Yeah, exterior property areas, that's also in red.
Yeah, that's section 302. Sanitation, exterior property and premises shall be maintained in a clean, safe, and sanitary condition. The occupant shall keep that part of the exterior property that such occupant occupies or controls in a clean and sanitary condition.
Okay. Commissioner, do we have any questions on this?
Well, I have
Comments?
I have a question about vacant structures and land. I asked Charles about this yesterday. What exactly does that mean for vacant land, where there are wooded areas or natural areas that people are trying to maintain in that kind of a state?
You know, someone who's just letting their vacant lot grow wild.
Natural vegetation.
Yes, and because there's quite a bit of that, and that provides a nice buffer, and there's some people here who specifically do it for the appearance and for the wildlife. So Bobby looked up something, I think at our last workshop, that dealt with more suburban or rural areas.
As far as which one?
I don't remember which section we were talking about when we looked it up, but 301.3 vacant structures and land that says maintained in a clean, safe, secure, and sanitary condition. I don't know if that means you can't have woods on it.
I do remember something like that. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I can continue to look for it. I think it was something like if they designated it as, I'll continue.
That'd be great.
I think we can ask Pam,
She was just telling me, if a lot formally has an address that used to have a house on it, we typically make them maintain it.
Okay.
But we don't have any official way to say, okay, from now on, this lot is natural. We're just gonna let it grow. And, we don't have
We're a
any way.
city. Everything has an address and everything should be maintained up to the city's type standard.
Well, if there was never a house there wouldn't be an address. I don't know if we have any instances like that. Do we have any place in the city?
That never had an address.
Yeah.
The lots down there by the Bass Capital and the pond, the lots north of that have never had an address. It's never been developed.
is that those 17 acres down there
Yeah.
that are vegetated?
Right.
Okay.
They're natural vegetation.
Okay, that's,
But nothing in a neighborhood.
Nothing.
I'm thinking over on Grand Rondo, right next to Elizabeth's house, there's a wooded lot.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
they had a
what
house on
It had a house on it.
it. They have a house.
yeah, that's the house there,
That's
right?
next to
East
that.
Grand Rondo. One next to it has an address at 615 Florida. There used to be a house there. And the one right behind it is 613, and it had a house. It actually still has the stairs there. Where the city or the site of they tore the houses down.
So right now, that's the acid test. If there's an address,
Yeah.
we make them.
If there's
Maintain it.
if there's an address, it should be maintained. Because that's when you get your address, is when you
Put a house.
put a house on it.
We do have some lots on East Grand Rondo that don't have houses, but people maintain them, just because they don't want the vegetation.
Did they previously have an address on it?
No.
I mean, a house on it, I apologize.
well, right at the dead end, man, you would, Slaughter and Grand Rondo. Yeah, Grand Slaughter, next into Grand Rondo. Okay, Center Street, I think it's Center. Yeah, Center Street. There used to be a house there, you can get two-story building there. And right on the very end of, where John's into Grand Rondo, there used to be,
You talking
two houses
Cedar
there.
Street? You talking Cedar Street?
Yeah, the street.
Between, just before
Yeah,
Grand Rondo?
Yeah, just before Grand Rondo.
That's Cedar Street.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what she was mentioning. Those all have
Yeah,
addresses.
the two-story
Yeah.
building that was there.
Yeah.
But you know, for a while, we kinda got on them, and they used to keep it clean. But I think a couple of times, if I'm not mistaken, I think the city had to go there and clean it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've done that, we've leaned it then, right?
yeah, we got a lien on that property.
Is there anything in this that, that we would like, if somebody wanted to keep, some of our places have got larger lots, and they wanted to keep a vegetated buffer?
As it looks like, just from quick research, other cities, they allow a property owner to designate it as a natural area, and then the city and the fire department go out, and if it poses a threat to a developed area, they have to have a 20-foot buffer where it is maintained. But if it doesn't, then they're allowed to have a natural area.
That sounds,
I would suggest there be an exception, because when you create ordinances and laws with no exceptions, you put yourself in a bad spot. You never know what's gonna come along, in the future.
and so by doing that, they would just, if they wanted, say they knocked a house down and they want the natural vegetation to take over that property, they could come in and ask for it to be,
Yeah, so long as it didn't affect another.
didn't affect another homeowner. Okay. Is that something that we want to add, commissioners? Is there any language in there that we want to add?
Well, I would hope that Bobby could draft us something, because, I mean, there are quite a few lots here where people have natural areas. I mean, for example, the RV park was that way before they decided to make it an RV park. There's quite a few around town.
So
Yeah.
Bobby, could you wordsmith that for us?
Yeah, because there's another, when we're doing this, there's another section that I want to rewrite
Okay,
in more plain terms,
in
so.
more plain terms. Okay,
Section.
so you could wordsmith that for us, okay? To protect those that wanted that natural buffer and those that wanted just natural vegetation across their property. Okay, is there any other comments on this section that we've just read through? Okay. We want to go to the next section?
Section 504, I believe is the next one.
The plumbing systems and fixtures.
Plumbing systems and fixtures. Everybody there?
Mhm. Yeah.
Plumbing fixtures shall be properly installed and maintained in working order and shall be kept free from obstructions, leaks, and defects, and be capable of performing the function for which such plumbing fixtures are designed. Plumbing fixtures shall be maintained in a safe, sanitary, and functional condition. Fixture clearances. Plumbing fixtures shall have adequate clearance for usage and cleaning. Plumbing system hazards. Where it is found that a plumbing system or structure constitutes a hazard to the occupants or the structure by reason of inadequate service, inadequate venting, cross connection, back siphonage, improper insulation, deterioration, or damage, or for similar reasons, the code official shall require the defects to be corrected to eliminate the hazard.
Okay, any comments? Okay. Let's move on to
Then,
the final one.
506, sanitary drainage system. General, plumbing fixtures shall be properly connected to either a public sewer system or to an approved private sewage disposal system. Maintenance, every plumbing stack, vent, waste, and sewer line shall function properly and be kept free from obstructions, leaks, and defects. Grease interceptors. Grease interceptors and automatic grease removal devices shall be maintained in accordance with this code and the manufacturer's installation instructions. Grease interceptors and automatic grease removal devices shall be regularly serviced and cleaned to prevent the discharge of oil, grease, and other substances harmful or hazardous to the building drainage system, the public sewer, the private sewage disposal system, or the sewage treatment plant or processes. Records of maintenance, cleaning, and repairs shall be available for inspection by the code official. Section 507, storm drainage, general drainage of roofs and paved areas, yards, and courts, and other open areas on the premises shall not be discharged in a manner that creates a public nuisance.
Okay, any comments on this, commissioners?
Well, actually, I have a comment on the plumbing one. I think we need to have some kind of exception for people to be able to actually find a plumber and Crescent City. that's the most looked for, service. I'm kind of joking, but kind of not.
Never have a common comment. But I know that is definitely a need here, and hopefully our high school will work on that, and helping some of the students get some of that through some of those new programs that they're offering, because we could definitely use one.
But then seriously, we had plumbing that didn't work for 3 months because we couldn't find anybody competent to fix it. People came and they didn't know how to fix it. Terrible. From Palm Coast.
Okay, so that's the only comments on that?
Yes.
Okay. Charles, do you have anything else?
Those are the sections we missed. Bobby wanted to clarify that there were some questions about entering a property. The way it's actually stated is you have show ID and request permission. If you're denied entrance, then you go by the usual legal means, court order. But he just wanted to, I think he wants to clarify that. But
Yeah, if I could get y'all's permission just to redraft that to where it's very clearly stated that the city's not giving the code official the power to enter somebody's house when,
Which section?
without per 105.3.
Yeah, you're gonna go back to 104, or 105.
Alright, so 105.
Was that?
It'll be in your big document. It's in your packet, you have your packet?
Yeah, of course I have one.
Okay, it's right here, it's 105.
It's about 3, the rate of entry.
Go back to 105.
5, 6, that's about 7 pages in. I do have a question about that. Because this code is very, it's very detailed code. So my question is the city gonna be seeking a court order for something like a leaky faucet? You know, and what is going to protect people from something like that? I thought most cities provided that the inspectors can only address things they can see from the outside. Isn't that our situation now? I mean, how does this change things?
well, be complaint driven as well as our code official sees from the street. If we know something's a problem, this covers rental property as well as owner occupied property. So if we have problems with the rentals, I know we've had instances where we had rentals that are in really bad shape, but they met the building code. We have properties that meet the building code, but they don't meet maintenance standard like this. So it'd be, and just like our code, it's only as good as you know, the process and the enforcement. So it's not like when this gets passed, suddenly we're gonna have 150 maintenance cases coming before us. It's a tool we can use if the problem, neighbors are complaining and there's just a problem and we say, well, sorry, it meets the building code, there's nothing we can do. Now we have a tool that we can address neighbors' concerns or there's a blighted property in the community.
Well, I can't understand why the neighbors would have concerns with what happens when someone's inside their house. I mean,
Well,
this to me lends.
I think if that's mostly a building official function. If we have a rumor that there's rental property in the city and it's a hovel inside, you know, we can use our maintenance to ask the building official to request entry, to do check the bathroom, that the bathrooms actually work.
You've got
You
residents.
know,
Do we have infestations, you know?
I used to throw newspapers. You know, I was a field manager for Tampa Bay Times. And every now and then, you know, you get into some of the buildings and you'd be dropping papers at the doors. And all of a sudden, smell on the other side of that door. And, you know, we would call those in, and 9 times out of 10, of course, it'd be somebody that passed away. Sometimes you have to enter properties for different various reasons. You have to be able to have that right to call the right people to go in there and do that, and I just think that, for the most part, people aren't gonna go in and look for leaky faucets. Okay, that's really not what this is about. It's really about something that's not usually right, something that's just not right. And leaky faucets doesn't count for that.
Well, isn't a law enforcement safety check take care of that? When I was working for the sheriff's department before, they had something going on, a smell or a non-occupant for a while. Sheriff's department is completely capable of knocking on the door and regaining entry legally. That's kind of what their purpose
It's
is.
just one example.
Well, I understand, but when you gave me the example, in my mind, I'm thinking the sheriff's department, that's their job. I don't think we should be knocking on people's door.
In my legal opinion, you are not going to get a court order to go into anybody's house for any kind of code violation, I'll be honest with you.
No.
It's just, I think this may be unnecessary. I don't see any reason where a court's ever gonna give you permission.
That's why I'm saying, why put it in there if it's not gonna be useful?
That's why I was gonna rewrite it to the fact, I mean, I don't think there's any problem if we ask for permission and the person welcomes you in. then
Oh,
that's-
absolutely, that's a different story.
But, yeah, no, and I think it's labeled wrong, because right of entry, I don't think we have the right to enter. That would be permission it's permission from the court, or permission from the homeowner. I don't necessarily like that section at all.
I agree.
It kind of, in a roundabout way, it gets back to you either gonna have permission or get a court order. I think it could be a lot more succinctly written, if that's what the commission desires, if they even wanna have anything in there about entering somebody's home.
I don't.
I know a lot
It's
of
very
people.
helpful for rental, if you have
It is helpful.
absentee
Yeah.
landlord, the
And
conditions
there are
of that.
times when the sheriff that's not necessarily,
Yeah.
The
that's
general
not
said,
their,
please
that's
come
that's
check
not
on
their,
this.
yeah.
When
Sarah, I have a question about
Yes.
that issue, for Bobby, actually, can we treat, rental property differently than owner-occupied property and commercial property differently?
In what sense? I mean, yes, you could, as the expectation of privacy, I would think that the renter is gonna have the same expectation of privacy as a homeowner.
Right, well, basically for safety issues, having a higher standard of safety for, rented dwellings and a higher standard of safety for commercial commercial structures where the public is, invited in and people make money. Because obviously people consider, like you say, there's a greater expectation of privacy when you own your own home. And then you assume people will be more responsible more caring about their own safety. And I know Charles passed out a residential rental property ordinance that, I think I pulled up, from Palm Coast, but basically, can we treat, for the purposes of minimum maintenance standards, can we treat rentals and commercial differently?
Not in the aspect of entering it without somebody's permission, no.
No, isn't there some laws though on the books that says if you are a person that rents a property, that if you give them a 24-hour notice that you'd like to enter the property for some reason, that you are allowed to do that because you actually are the owner of the property.
Yeah, yes, as a renter, if you give them notice and you come at a reasonable time.
So I would assume, okay, I mean, yes, it's their property, and yes, it's, whatever they're doing in there is whatever they're doing, but if you as the person that rents the building or rents the property, if you're thinking there's something else going on that maybe shouldn't be, or there's something broken that maybe is affecting the guy next door that you've gotta come in and fix, or whatever the problem might be, I believe that there is something out there that says, hey, you gotta give them 24-hour notice that you can go in there and do those things.
But then we would
That's a
still
separate issue.
be getting permission from the owner of the property. We can't, as the city, say, hey, we're
The
coming to
renter of
look
the
at
property,
24
yes,
hours.
the
Yeah.
renter of the property.
And each lease is different. I mean, my lease, where I'm at out there, they have to give you 10 days notice.
Okay.
Each lease is gonna be different.
Can I say
Oh,
this?
yes, let Commissioner Banks speak, please.
When I was on the board of directors for Smith Thomas Court, we had to give each individual a let them know when time for inspection, 3 days in advance. The one that was ready. And the same thing was, 2305 Hudson Avenue in Palaca, when I was on that board. We had to let the people know. Now, it was certain things that would cut already dry. If your lights get cut off more than 3 times in one consecutive 6 months, you automatically going to be gotten vacated, automatically. Certain things that the people that owns the property already got in place. So I don't see where the city need to get involved in.
My thought would be, you have substandard rental and the tenant wants something done about it, the landlord won't do anything about it. The tenant could invite in an inspection. We had a situation recently where we had a dozen men or something living in a place where they hadn't turned on the water. So, I think it's important we have some access for the tenant's sake. If landlord lives somewhere else and just not taking care of business, they have some recourse. We can take it out.
And honestly, if you leave it up to the courts are gonna tell you whether or not. So if we have that in there, that if they refuse to allow us to go in, the courts would decide that, wouldn't they, Bobby? Whether or not we have a reason to go into in our house. And like you're saying, chances of them giving us that are gonna be,
Well, in my head, just sitting here thinking, for me to even advise that would be something we should even try to explore, to ask the court to go into somebody's house. I can't even think of something right now where I would feel comfortable asking the court for us to go in. I think we need to have, it needs to be, if we get permission, then we can go in. Obviously, there's other remedies. I think that in that situation, if the tenant gives you permission, the tenant can, so if we had a situation where somebody's substandard renting where the heater's not working in the winter or something, and the tenant says, hey, can you come and inspect this? It's not up to code. I think that's totally fine. I think I don't think there's gonna be a situation where we're just gonna be able to go in or want to go into somebody's.
Oh, and I don't think that that's fair to anybody to just go do that, okay?
no, you never
Yeah, you wouldn't just do
do
that.
that, but
This says you have to ask.
you have to.
Yeah, those organizations got a process.
So let me ask you this, Bobby, in fairness to neighbors, okay? Say you have a house and it's infested with rodents. We as the city, and the rodents are spilling out and they're bothering the other neighbors. We as a city, how would we handle that? Would the health department come in? Would we call the health department in? How would we?
That's probably more appropriate than the code, yeah. Because any health and safety of the public is gonna, that might get to the standard where a court would issue. But you're still gonna have some type of, there's gonna have to be some legal probable cause standard for the court to.
That's what I'm saying, I don't want it to limit us, that we could never do that if you ever had that type of a situation. But that would be where the health department would step in, correct?
Yeah, and I mean, it can be written that we can enter with permission or in exigent circumstances, we can use the court process as necessary. I just didn't want it to give off.
Okay, that makes.
Because with emails that I've received, the way it's written now, it's given off the perception that we're gonna be able to enter people's homes. So that needs to be corrected anyways.
All right.
So I will, this wouldn't even be February, it'd be March first reading.
It's not scheduled.
Okay. So I can get that, whenever it comes back to the first reading, if it comes back, I'll have language, and I'll have that language for the exception for the nature law or whatever, natural law.
Commissioner Bailey, what sheriff's department did you work at? Or, I mean, did they just go in and check houses? I mean, how would it?
Absolutely not. They would do safety checks, and as every sheriff department does.
Was
If
that
a loved
here
one
in Florida?
calls, that happened to my mother, she didn't answer the phone, was supposed to go places, the sheriff came down, knocked on her door, found her dead outside the back door.
Oh, yeah, they do, I mean, they do that,
They
the
do
sheriff
safety
does
checks
that.
every day.
But I'm talking about something like this, where we're talking about there might be an issue with a house. Was that here in
They
Florida?
can force entry if they deem a imminent threat or danger is there, or believe someone is being hurt or has been hurt. I mean, they can enter a residence legally that way. The city cannot. And I think we're forgetting one aspect here that maybe y'all don't realize, and I ran into this actually as the helicopter pilot, the sheriff's department, was when the code enforcement officer comes in and goes into a residence that, may be hostile, basically there's a lot of, code enforcement officers that are hurt, killed, damaged. How these people are desperate. I mean, you're putting that lady at undue risk to go into somebody's house that may realize they may be on the street in an hour.
And I don't think you would ever,
Yeah, no,
I don't think
we're
you would
not-
ever
we're not
enter
trying
a
to do
house
that.
without,
We're not trying to
without
do
some sort of law
I'm just
enforcement
saying.
in there.
Let me, so this may put everybody at ease. So even if we don't have that written in our code, that if there's some crazy thing happens where we need to ask the court, we can still do it. We don't need that specifically written in there. That's already a state statute process that we would be able to do if something crazy off the wall comes down the line. And we meet as a body and feel that that's the appropriate process, then that's something that we can do even if we don't have it in the code.
Okay.
Well, Mayor, let me ask you this if I could. Now, you talking about this, a plain residence, or either a rental? No, let's get straight.
It's kind of
All of them, cause I know the rental, the one, all the biggest, all the boats that I was served on in the years past, they got their own bylaws.
They do.
Yeah, they got their own bylaws, and they can enforce them, and they do the enforcement. We didn't never go out there, even though they would go in the plot pound like me. We go to the manager, and the manager gave the conviction notice. We didn't have nothing to do with it.
Well, owners have those, our owners have rights that we would not, that we definitely do not have. And so they have the right to own their own properties with, you know, with a legal remedy.
Yeah, when you sign that contract to rent, you gonna sign up on that. Cause just like the commission says, people get serious.
Mayor, if I could,
Yes, Commissioner Tito.
okay, I'm not, when I brought up rental properties, I was not talking about well-maintained, corporately owned properties that might have a board of directors and bylaws. There are many rental properties in Crescent City that are owned by individuals, and quite a few of those are in pretty bad condition. I think the city manager just mentioned, was that a house that people, it was what?
There's a duplex.
Right, the duplex, yeah, I know where it is. So there are a lot of individually owned places, and they are a form of blight on the city when they're not well maintained, and some of them have the people living in them living in very unsanitary or inadequate conditions. So the situation that I'm hoping our minimum maintenance standards will address will make sure that even if a tenant doesn't complain, and in a lot of cases, if you have a tenant who doesn't have any other place to go, or, you know, is financially in a difficult situation, they probably won't complain. So the city needs to have a way to address those situations, because they are part of our blight. So I'm hoping that this ordinance will do that.
To do a registration order?
Whatever the provisions of minimum maintenance standards and as well, the rental unit registration, I think would be helpful, because that lets you know who the owners are who are renting. And apparently it involves an education process about what the maintenance standards are. So, yes, there are a number of what I consider very bad situations around town, and they don't help us.
Any other discussion before I open up public comment? Okay, seeing none, this time I'm gonna open up any public comment that you want to speak to the minimum maintenance standards that we're discussing. Please come forward, state your name and your address. Karen will set the timer, there's 3 minutes.
Diane Sykes, here for Chestnut. This is a comment in regard to, I guess, documents in general that are submitted and that we're gonna be reviewing. Is there any way that those documents can be provided in Word as well as PDF format? Obviously, it has to be created first in Word and then saved as a PDF. PDFs, you can't search. It's difficult to sometimes keep up with electronic copies if you can't search.
Karen, you can't?
The only reason why we can't keep it in Word and pass it around is because anybody can change any information on it. It has to go out legally, as a PDF. So if I sent it to you in Word, you can go back and say, and you can change anything you wanted on it and say, look at, this is what mine says, how come yours is different? That's why it has to go out in a PDF, and that's why on the website, it's only PDF files that go out.
Oh, thank you.
And when you're asking, Diane, I'll ask you this, so when you're searching something, what are you trying to search
Well, if it, like,
that you're having some difficulty with?
okay, if it said somewhere that, ozone levels have to be checked, pursuant to section blah, 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 in the statutes, and I wanted to find out if ozone was present anywhere else in the document where it detailed it.
I believe when Municode comes up, you should be able to put in ozone, shouldn't you, Karen?
Yes, ma'am.
And that should be coming up soon, and so when you do that on the website, and you put in ozone, it's gonna give you everywhere ozone in our ordinances, correct?
In our entire code.
In our entire code.
Okay, but
We're gonna be uptown,
Mayor,
high tech.
I have a question for you. Will Municode, will our agenda documents be in the Municode system? Okay.
No,
So that won't be searchable. I am the worst person at software in the entire world, but I think you can search PDF documents.
I was gonna, if you
I
hit
just did it the other
Control
day.
F,
Yeah,
that's what I'm, Control F.
it's a
And
well
it should
kept
work.
secret. I Googled it. It's the only thing I know.
I just want to comment, I saw a mayor out there, assisting a neighbor of mine, with their yard maintenance. I thought that was a wonderful thing to do. And hopefully it wasn't to put a lien on their property, but I just wanted to comment on that the lady who lives here is incapable of handling her own maintenance. And I guess once it's caught up, other neighbors have offered to help keep it up, but just.
and that is, once we get her to that point, then, and I mentioned that to her as well, that to reach out to neighbors to see if they'll help her keep it at that, but, it's been a joint effort by a lot of people involved, and so, I can't get any credit for that. It's been a blessing though to be out there, knowing that does take some of the burden off of her, so.
Yes. No, thank you.
And the neighbors, your neighbors, so thank you for acknowledging that. I know your neighbors have been,
Yes, because some of the neighbors have wanted to go over there with their mowers, but not having the capacity to walk the property and make sure that they weren't
well,
going to hit cement blocks.
it's a situation where these minimum maintenance standards, I'm going through these and I'm going, okay, I now better understand, because in some cases it wasn't safe for the neighbors either.
Yeah.
And so hopefully now it will be safe, given, got a couple more days and it should be safe.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we'll close that out. And then I guess I'm gonna close public comment out. Yes, Commissioner DeVito?
I had a couple questions just in terms of code issues. So you had, just in terms of code enforcement, I think at the last meeting you mentioned something about we have found out that every code complaint needs to have a name attached to it or something like that. What was that?
Yeah, no, you can no longer take anonymous complaints.
Right, that was my understanding. I think it changed in 2021.
Pam knows, Pam. When did it change? It recently, in the last couple of years.
2021, I think.
Okay, and then just, on the wonderful transformation, that Ms. Sykes was just talking about, so that was, a voluntary situation. In other words, the cleanup has been requested by, or that's with permission.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, we should sign your thing.
Okay, because, thank you, just as kind of a follow-up, because a lot of people have been concerned about that.
So what, that she didn't give permission?
No, the whole situation.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying it's not anything punitive or whatever, there's permission given.
No, she did, she gave permission.
That's
And I made sure all along that she understood every process we were going through, the city was going through, just to kind of, and she gave permission.
Well, that's great, thank you.
With that, any other comments? Okay, I'm gonna close out this workshop. And we're going to give Karen about 5 minutes and we'll open up our CRA. Okay. The CRA workshop.
Thank you. So what I want to do is, I include this presentation in your packet, as well as our, some of our short-term goals. So I'll kind of recreate this for you. A lot of this is to bring Commissioner Bailey up to speed on the redevelopment plan and our efforts. And then I'll go through I won't go through the short-term goals, there's a lot of them, and then make a couple of points about it, and then we'll end up on the grant program that we talked a little bit about in the last meeting. So the 2018 redevelopment plan was created when we expanded. We had a central CRA, I think, since 1998. And then we created the north and south. There was an interest in expanding. So at that time, you do a finding of blight for the new districts, and then you create a redevelopment plan. You have to have a redevelopment plan adopted. You don't have to do everything in the plan, but you can't do it if it's not in the plan. So the plans are typically written very broadly, so it outlines all your powers essentially, without being very specific, because then you kind of fenced yourself in. So I look at this plan as sort of a placeholder plan, because if you look at the north and south, I'll show you, there are not a lot of goals for the new districts that were formed. But there is a lot of ideas for the central district, not like a master plan, which shows how it all looked when it was done, and the short, mid, and long range goals to get there. It's just kind of here's some neat ideas, some improvements you could do for the central CRA. So that's where most of the detail is, and some of it's already been done. The marina development, this is Sunrise Park. There's a boardwalk and lookout, which has not been done, which comes from this is the turn, our water plant is right here. The historical remnants of the prison cell and the water, we just recently cleaned out the old jail, and the waterworks is right next to it. It's an old where there was a water wheel. And then the parking has been done at the boat ramp. The marina, they call it the marina, has been done. It was actually constructed more straight out into the lake, but this part has been constructed. And the restrooms have been constructed. There's no bait and tackle or fuel or marine supplies. And then the pedestrian connections, you'll keep seeing this over and over again, this looks like red brick sidewalks, which connect it to Central. Right now, you have to walk in the street if you're gonna walk from the Three Bananas down to Sunrise Park, to where this gate would be. We've currently looked at, with the fence guy, we're getting a bid to fence off the water plant so the public can walk around and get to the old jail. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. It also identified some opportunities for historic-based tourism, such as the old jail and the waterworks, and then the AME Church at 508 Eucalyptus as a historic site and a destination for folks looking for historic tourism. It also talked about what we call the Miller property, or it's called Market Square, I think, more commonly, or as commonly. So it showed us a development of a boutique hotel on the site as a hotel concept with 36 rooms, covered promenade. We did a workshop on this and talked about just sort of, because we did a hotel study later and determined that hotel was really feasible in this market. But a mixed-use development with residential over retail, and allowing for the possibility, rather than one developer to do the whole thing and save the day, we could actually sell it in slices, making sure that each new construction kind of fit like a puzzle piece all together. So when it was all done, it might even look like one development. So it also identified streetscape improvements. So this is showing where you can take out some on-street parking and put basically a deck there, and create outdoor seating for a location that may not have room for it on the premises, or if there's not enough room in the right-of-way. It talks about linking Lake Stout and Crescent Lake and the marina all through this improved streetscaping. Angle parking on one side, parallel on the other. This is the parklets, it's called a parklet, where you can provide seating. And then to explore a gaslight district option. There was a gas line on Central, it's been abandoned, I've been told, no longer functioning. And then it talked about marketing and promotional program. As you know, we've moved ahead with this. Develop marketing plan, promotional calendar, downtown logo. These are just examples from other parts of the country. And then downtown parking program, acquire or lease land to support expansion of free public off-street parking. and develop on-street parking as part of the streetscape plan, including side streets. So you could say a little bit of that was done when they repaved Central. We identified some compact spaces, which may allow for a larger total number of spaces. Allow balconies and verandas over the sidewalk, which is a code thing we can do in our overlay, and then designate the Planning and Zoning Commission as the design review committee. Right now, our land development code is being updated, so we'll have design standards and design review as part of that. And then identified Lake Stella Park improvements. Right currently, it's just a gazebo now and a walking path, but this talked about expand the facilities and size of the park, including active and passive recreation, include green areas and parking, and then again, through that streetscaping, through brick walks and so forth, connect it to Central, so it's obvious people walk and go down and check out the lake. Facade grants to assist property owners, also in-kind assistance, economic and regulatory incentives. That's like what we're doing with the small business. We now facilitate a meeting once a month with the small business development specialist to meet with local business owners. And then this has us acquiring key parcels of vacant land, market to developers for specific elements of the plan. We don't have the funds for that right now, but it's identified as an item we could do in the plan. Develop fewer conflicting paths of ingress and egress into the downtown area. I'm really not sure what that's pointing to. We have a good grid system, other than one street that was closed for the school. We still have the existing grid pattern, which is excellent. And then place ornamental elements at the entrances to our downtown. So that'd be something along that edge of the highway, say, welcome to downtown. Establish maintenance program for streetscape enhancements, which is an ongoing process. And then conduct review of land use regulations to identify and reduce use conflicts and develop mixed use zoning to eliminate conflicts. So we're doing this now as part of the land development code update. So here are the projects, identify the map. So the blue area, try reading this. This is for historic-based tourism, which is Central Avenue, the proposed, the Miller site, and the Sunrise Park, the path around our water plant, essentially. And then the orange is this new pier. I would say this is what you get when you use grad students for a project. You usually get something strange looking built. So this is a big moon-shaped pier. And then the marina development is the third area for development. And a lot of that has been done in that piece of this puzzle. And then it tells us about the proposed plan aims to resurface Central Avenue as a unified artery. We did that as part of a DOT grant, and just didn't change it over to the parking angle and parallel, but did just resurface it and restripe the parking. But again, you see this red, looks like red brick sidewalks. The idea is just to link everything very easily and visually for the public. This will be a multi-million-dollar streetscaping project, which we would hope to achieve over time, incrementally. And then, again, it shows it here connecting Central. There's 3 bananas. We connect it to this park system through streetscape enhancements. So this is showing sidewalks and even little shade trees along the walkway. I'm not sure there's enough right-of-way through there to do that unless we made this a one-way road. Then the green areas, and then a wood deck that's would go out into the lake, come back around, and I know from being over there recently, there's not enough room in our water plant. We have to keep the public out of our water plant, it's very obvious, and we have wellheads there where all this is. So the actual path might be able to go out into the water, but it would stay very close to the shoreline and get to the jail and the water wheel, and then back again the same way, just for security of our water facilities there. So this is just some illustrations. Again, we showed red brick here and orange brick here, with still some grass here. We went with this, the little sample block we're doing, we went with this design. This shows what's called a rain garden. So this is recessed bed where the street flushes, the first flush of rain goes into that and catches all the cigarette butts and the oil and so forth. And then every now and then you scoop that out, and so it helps clean the water before it runs on down the hill into the lake. Now for the north and south, as I mentioned, it's just very broad, very briefly, bring water and sewer to the entire CRA area, pave dirt roads inside the CRA. I believe there's one and a partial dirt road in the north CRA right behind the Winn-Dixie, and I didn't find any in the south CRA that are still dirt roads. We have them in the city, but they're just not in our redevelopment areas. And then participate if possible in the development of a plan to identify broadband. We're working with the Chamber of Commerce on that. They have a task force, and they're working to get state and federal funding to bring, to have better broadband available to all of our residents. And then work with Planning and Zoning Commission on the redevelopment of Grove Avenue and Williams Lane, which is some houses on the north, the row of houses on the north side of Harry Banks Park. And there's one side, the CRA boundary is really strange to you. It changes sides of the street on each block, but there's two streets. Williams Lane, I think, is the partial dirt road to redevelop those areas. And then work with outside agencies to assist with the quality single-family housing that results in home ownership in the CRA. Our CRAs are mostly commercial land uses, though. And then provide facade grants, in-kind assistance, and so forth, just like in the central, for property owners in both the north and south. I think that's it. So one of the things I mentioned in my cover letter I'm proposing is that we plan to do update the redevelopment plan. It's time. Every 5 to 7 years you're supposed to update it because conditions have changed. But also do a master planning and visioning process at the same time. So we end up with a vision and a master plan for not only the downtown, but the whole corridor of how we want that to develop over time. There is a Department of Economic Opportunity grant we can apply for, which would be awarded at the end of June. And so we would start this process next fall. So we can put it in next year's CRA budget. I did one in Newport Richey for their downtown in the US 19 corridor, and I think it was about $90,000. I got half of that in a grant covered by a DEO grant. So it's well worth it. It's a really inspirational. The plans come out. It's a very public process, and kind of figure out what you want the city to look like in 20 years. And then we use it as our guide. It has short range, mid range, and long range goals that point us in the right direction. So any questions on the adopted plan? I've been over it a number of times.
Is this what we gotta do?
That's
Is there
our,
anything that you can add or anything that you can change, or this is what we do?
well, we can't do it if it's not in here. So if we had some new thing where we wanna run a pier down the coast all the way to the other end of the CRA, something that's not in the plan, we'd have to amend the plan and include it in the plan before we could spend CRA funds on it.
Mayor, I have a question about that.
Yes.
Well, okay, but Charles, you just said the key word. We can't spend CRA funds on something that's not in the plan, but we can spend city money on something that's not in the plan.
General fund, right? Yeah, better place, all that. Yeah.
Right, so, and we're not mandated to do all these things, correct?
Correct, we don't have to do them.
Right, and we actually don't have the money to do
Correct.
most of these.
So the other pages I gave you are kind of that implementation strategy I passed out, and I made them, they're mostly short-term goals. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit, what's right in front of us to do, and it's a lot of work, and we rely on a lot of partners to get that done. So I feel like we've got a lot to do as we begin planning for that those long-range goals. If we ever want to borrow against the redevelopment fund, we need that long-range plan, those definitive goals. And that's what it'll take us about 5 or 6 months to go through that process. Lots of public meetings, lots of input, lots of drafts, and then we finally have something that we're excited about in the end, probably next December or January, if we get started in early fall. So the other things I wanted to mention were just kind of some ways to look at what we're doing. At its core, our mission, the CRA's mission, is the elimination of slum and blight. We became a redevelopment area because we identified, and slum and blight are many things. It can be, as a food desert, it can be ineffective road grid, could be vacant buildings, it could be lack of business. There's a number of definitions for slum and blight. It's not just rundown buildings. So that's our core mission, is the elimination of slum and blight. So that's a lot of physical improvements if you think about it, but also supporting an economy that prevents that from happening, encourages building use and so forth. So the other thing I'd like you to think about is most of our CRAs are commercial property. So I think a great outcome of our CRA work could be that people make money. Like, you can make money. Imagine if our reputation was, you go to Crescent City and you're downtown, you can make money. Whether you start a business, buy a building, you invest in downtown Crescent City, you're gonna make money. And I think there was a comment, one of our recent meetings about, if I buy a building and I fix it up and I use the grant and then I sell it, I'm just gonna make money. And my reaction is, well, that's great. Maybe somebody will see what you did. Well, I'm gonna buy a building and fix it up and make some money. And then what we get on our end is we get fixed up buildings. You know, our grant program has been successful. People, they know that if you invest in Crescent City, you're gonna make money. If you open a business here, you're gonna make money. So every community I've served in, especially when we're talking about payback clauses and so forth on grants, people said, well, they're just gonna fix that building and make money. And I hope so. I hope the reputation we get is if you buy a building here, it's a good investment because you'll be able to turn around and sell it for more money. And then we get our buildings fixed up and our redevelopment effort is a success. So consider that. I've also had it when we offer grants to somebody to start a business or open a business. They're just gonna make money. Exactly. It's exactly what we want them to do, is come here, make money. And if our grant can seed that, get them to make money, then we're being successful.
How do we utilize the CRA, like you just said, about getting business and let them make money? That's the key focus I'm on, is how do we take this street and put it where it is a business district?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. So how do we use our money? One I think fundamental issue we have is somebody walked in here today and said, I want to bring my retail shop here. There's a lot of work to be done on the buildings before they could ever open. There's very little, almost nothing that's turnkey in our community. So that's a big, it's a roadblock. We're just stuck. Christine's been working very hard with property owners to get their stuff out. There's a lot of storage downtown. Get the stuff out, let's get it rentable, get it at least as a shell. You know, it's kind of a first step. So if our money could get it rentable, you know, there's a desire to only use money if there's a tenant ready to go in. But a lot of times people won't even approach us because they look around like, you know, nothing's ready for me, nothing's for rent. You don't see a for rent sign really anywhere downtown. So that's one thing. And then I think you and I had talked before about rental subsidy. We had a very successful program in Newport Richey where we would pay in that first year. It was like a sliding, start out with half the rent and then declining. But we had a $4 million budget to work with there. So I don't think we have the funds for that yet, but I think once we've got to get we have an inventory of buildings. Once they're all kind of ready, then we can switch and go, well, let's start supplementing rent. You know, you'll move in, we'll pay half your rent for the first quarter, and then we'll back it up to a third of the rent for, you know, kind of wean them onto full subsidy, because that first year is always the toughest.
Can we use CRA money for that?
Yes. It's in our plan. We wrote it in, it's in the redevelopment plan.
Ma'am, I have a
Yes.
follow-up question to Doc's question. So Charles, you said, when our buildings are ready, then we could switch the money to rental subsidy. But what kind of process are you talking about, and how long do you anticipate that will take, that our buildings will be, quote, ready?
I have no idea how long it takes. That's part of our discussion later. If we switch our grant program up to a competitive process, where, as an example, we would have an August 1st deadline. Everybody's got to get their paperwork in by August 1st, because we know next year we budgeted $40,000. So let's say we get 10, 15 applicants in. We have 2 months then to go through them, or a month and a half, to get them ready for you, that they've got enough bids, everything's accurate, and then we'll rank order them based on what we think are the good, the important projects. And then it'll come to you, and you'll look over our ranking and all the applications, and you'll basically you'll award the money until it's all gone. So by the first meeting in October, you would award $40,000 in grants, and then essentially we're done for the year. And then it's the process of keeping up with them, make sure they fulfill the agreements and everything, all the work's done. And then until next August when the next deadline is. So that's a deadline driven process. So when somebody comes in April, like, can you help me move, I need an incentive, like, we're kind of done with that until you can apply in August, and we'll award you in October, and then you get the money by November. So that's the disadvantage of that system. You get somebody mid-year, it all goes out in a rush in October, and we're done for the year. So the way we were working was we were going after specific buildings, trying to get them either the curb appeal or the usability addressed until the money runs out. Either way, we'll run out each year. That's just what happens, and we wait, and then we get refunded October 1, the money's back, whatever you approved, and we take another round of applicants. We bring them to you as they come in, but if you'd rather compete and say, I don't want to pick the really good ones, you do a deadline, and then if you miss the deadline, you're just out for the year. And you guys decide, I like this one, and this one, and that's all the money. And that's that'll be a long conversation, but you'll basically spend all the money by the end of that meeting, and the other people just have to reapply the next year or do their project without grant assistance.
We already have a bucket of money for this year to spend, correct? And
Yes, we've spent a little bit of it. Yeah, there was $40,000 approved for this year.
Okay, so just $40,000. I guess my question is as a city, it's good that we have the CRA money to hopefully improve different aspects of the city. But what is the city doing to bring new businesses, and what is the projects that we need to bring in, and I'm just looking at it maybe from a different angle, to bring people in here, like the ecotourism, for example, the RV park. What's our priorities to try and get some of that to get here? Because that's really the other path to this, to sustain all of these programs that you're talking about as far as developing CRA development plans. You need people here to enjoy all the things you're talking about, and to sustain the restaurants and the retail and the whatever, the bakeries. We do have people around, but you also need those people always a new wave of people coming through to help sustain that in any place that you live, really. So how is the city prioritizing kind of getting some of this stuff reactivated? Because a lot of it just seems dead in the water right now.
Well, Christina has been reaching out to these absentee property owners. We start out by encouraging them. Sometimes we'll send just a code enforcement notification, hey, your building's a mess, you need to clean it up. So it's been sort of the nice approach. We do get a lot of inquiries, people looking for space.
I just talk about properties that are a mess. I mean, we just repainted the building down there, on the corner of Prospect and Central, and he's loaded it all up with furniture again. There doesn't seem to be an incentive for him to maybe do something else other than load it up with furniture. My question is we need to bring businesses in, okay, to sustain. If I'm a person that wants to put a restaurant in, or I'm a person that wants to put a retail store in, or something, I need people that are going to sustain that business. And so I'm not sure how Crescent City is moving along to
Gaining more residents, you mean, more shoppers, more customers?
just, from an ecotourism thing, you have, like the RV park, which would be a constant flux of new people coming in. You have, different festivals that would bring people in, to support some of the restaurants and stuff. And the people that are already here do a pretty good job trying to sustain us. Okay, but you still need more people to make it continuously be sustained. You know, maybe, like I know that we don't have the crappie fishing tournament this year. You know, there's just different things. I guess the promotion of the city and what we can offer to bring new blood in and just kind of keep things moving, to give those people that are trying to prosper here, more people to prosper from.
So
What's the priority there? It seems like everything's a little bit stagnant.
No, it's a multi-pronged approach. I would say Main Street's a great example of how we're doing that. So the special events schedule, the increased marketing is raising awareness of Crescent City and what's going on here. We're doing not only physical improvements on the ground, but we're looking at the regulatory environment. So our new downtown zoning district won't allow storage. Something's classified as being storage, won't be a permitted use in the downtown. So we're looking at how do we change the regulatory environment where what we don't want is not allowed in the downtown. So we're also, meanwhile, we now host the Small Business Development Center specialists here to work with entrepreneurs to help get started. So we're trying to, and we meet regularly with potential people who want to move into the area, open a business, as well as getting, so it's, rather than one main focus, it's a four-pronged approach to kind of raising all boats. So, and I always liken it to making meringue. You know, when you're whipping egg whites, if you stop, it all just goes flat again. You have to keep going, and eventually it solidifies. So we'll keep starting new events and promoting special events and marketing and finding new ways to market and reach out into the region. Meanwhile, we'll just keep looking at what's broken, what's a mess, what could look better, what can we fix up. Are our rules working? If something's permissible under our rules and we don't like it, can we change our rules? That's what part of the minimum maintenance discussion was about. Is, you know, people gotta pressure wash the outside of a commercial building. You know, right now that beats the building code. Algae is not against the building code, you know, from a rain spout, but minimum maintenance would say you need to just pressure wash it and, you know, maintain your building. So building maintenance, and then always working with entrepreneurs. If somebody opens up, embracing them and helping them do business better and to survive once they get here. We have a challenge in this early stage, it's chicken or the egg. You know, there's not a lot of audience. We want people to come set up.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
So we want to walk somebody around and they're like, most everything's empty or not usable. How am I going to survive here? So it's.
And I think this year already, I mean, we already have 2 new events just in the next coming months. We have the Art Walk and we have Soul Food Festival.
Yeah.
And I think both of those events are gonna, again, introduce more people to Crescent City.
And we'll keep getting new businesses that'll get some excitement, and some of those will leave again, and it's just a continuous process. The trick is we just have to keep at it.
Commissioner DeVito, you wanted to speak?
Yes, I thought Commissioner Burton asked a good question about what are the priorities. And actually, we are the CRA board, and we are the ones who set the priorities. That really hasn't happened since the CRA plan was reenacted. Charles mentioned that the CRA plan is kind of a placeholder. I think that it's essential that we do some things to do exactly what you said, which is figure out what the priorities are. Because my concern is that although what we have now is creating energy, positive energy, it's not enough to bring us up fast enough, particularly with respect to the crumbling buildings. So I think that if we're gonna keep our CRA and be good stewards of our CRA, there's several things that we need to do. One is we really do not have enough money to do what needs to be done just with the CRA funds, particularly since they can't be used for marketing. Charles, I think one thing you didn't mention is we are going to have a city website, correct?
Yes.
Right, and I think it's important. I mean, if you want to get people here and if you want to help businesses, I talked about this before, I think we need to have all our businesses up on the website so people can find them the way Willaca does. All their businesses are on the website, even some of our businesses. Our nursing home is on the website. So that's part of promotion. I don't think we can do this with CRA money alone. I think we need to figure out how to obtain grants. There's language in the CRA plan about leveraging private development. And again, Commissioner Burton, you raised the issue, how do we get businesses here? I think that's an excellent question. I think it needs more discussion. One thing that I did, and I have to kind of switch gears, we now have the Main Street
Yes.
thing. That is, I asked that everybody get a copy of the Main Street application, and I just went through it. There's some things that really stood out to me. The Commissioner Bailey, can you keep passing these down? It's 2 pages to make sure everybody has one. So the Main Street program, the city funds, right? Substantially at this point. We're paying the half-time salary of the Main Street manager, correct?
We pay all of her salary.
Right,
Except
I'm saying
5%.
we pay all of her salary, but she's half-time. And then the
Who's that?
other,
No, she's full-time.
Christina,
no, she's
yes, Main Street.
half of,
But
okay, she works half for the Main Street program and half for the city, correct? She's half-time with the Main Street program.
Well, it's sort of full-time with both. We provide, rather than writing them a check, we provide it, yeah, it's a combined,
Right.
everything she does for them is to the benefit of the CRA.
That's exactly my point. So, but we hire her and we provide their office space as well, right?
Yes.
So one, when you talk about, what are our priorities and all that kind of thing, and everybody can go through this themselves. I just wrote down things that stood out to me about our Main Street analysis. There's great data in there. Basically, one of the first things that jumped out at me is our city median household income is only $22,500. That's half of the county median income, which is $40,000. Florida household median income is $57,000. So overall, we're a low-income community in the city limits. I mean, I think obviously that has problems. Buildings in the Main Street area, 30% vacant on the ground floor, 95% on the second floor. And Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, but our second floors can be residential, correct?
Yes.
Right, so we don't have people living up there, we could have people living up there if we fix them up. Condition of buildings, 48% fair or poor, excellent, obviously balanced. 40 historic buildings in the Main Street area. Things we don't have that the Main Street application asked about, the master vision plan that you're talking about and you want to apply for the grant. We don't have a business association or redevelopment authority, they asked us about that. Actually, in the Main Street application, they said, are we a certified local government for historic preservation? And the application says we're working on it.
We are.
Because we have to change our ordinance to be qualified, correct?
That'll be part of the process.
Okay, so in a way, doesn't all this kind of need to be in our plan somewhere?
I'd have to look back at the original, if it's actually in, addendum to the plan.
Right, so, anyway, there's a lot of really good data in there. And also it tells us that our population increased over the last couple of years by more than 100 people. I don't know what that did to our socioeconomic status. But that's pretty good for, that's what, 10 to 15%?
Yeah.
So that part was good. To me, we need to figure out how to leverage the CRA money with grants. We need to figure out what money we can use from the general budget to supplement the CRA budget. And then, how do we, this kind of goes back to Commissioner Burke's question, how do we attract businesses and how do we attract private investment? And I'm wondering, can the chamber help us with that?
The chamber really focuses on head of household jobs, kind of industrial development, industrial park. This is something we've been challenged by folks in Palaca all the time. They really don't, other than the Small Business Development Center, which is not the chamber doesn't really focus on small, independent-owned businesses.
They call them, what do they call them, primary
They look at primary jobs.
jobs, and that would be more your industrial and
Employers with larger jobs, yeah. It's not, in fact, they were part of forming the Palaca Main Street program to deal with that aspect of business, to deal with small business. That's kind of Main Street's forte, is small business recruitment and development and so forth.
Yeah.
Not the chamber.
I think Main Street is one program, and I think it's very good that we have that program in our pocket right now. It does offer a lot of good, you gotta look for them, and of course you have to apply for them. But there's a lot of grants that we necessarily, if we were not in the Main Street program, would not even be able to apply for. But my question was more of it's really great to fix things up. Okay, but for example, when I look at this center over here, it's empty, still empty. Talked about putting a hotel up there, it doesn't make any sense at all to me. I think you're talking about putting, private, apartments and, I don't know, places to, I guess, eat and retail underneath
Commercial
it,
space on the
type
bottom,
of a
yeah.
thing like that. I don't know if that's really what we need at this point in time, but, I wouldn't mind seeing something like, maybe talking to, continuing education, type, of satellite building for continuing education from UF or possibly St. John's College. More of a, we have a problem, and I'm thinking off the top of my head a little bit, but we have a problem with animal control, for example. Why not partner with one of the colleges to do an animal husbandry type program with one of the colleges right here in Crescent City, which might help us, kill two birds with one stone. But we always seem to come back to, well, we need more restaurants and more retail. But you still have to have people here to support those things. And it's that's what I'm trying to get at is I love the idea that we're selling the places now on Oak Street. I think that we really need to get that kind of done with our sewer and things like that. I think those things are important. The more people we bring in, hopefully the better we can support some of these things that we're trying to do here. And I think I just would like an update every now and then as to where any of this is going, because it just seems somewhat stagnant.
It's a very incremental process.
Yes, and I understand that too. But I know that the business right across the street over here, I don't know what happened. He moved in, he moved out. And it's like, what's going on there? So I think there's a lot of negativity in the town right now that's not helping. That'll probably continue, which is too bad, but that doesn't help the city at all. So, I just,
So would this be part of our visioning?
Yeah.
It would.
It would
Vision.
be a
What are we gonna
visioning,
do then?
because
Vision will
that's
be
kind of
critical,
what,
yeah.
at some point we have to look at, and we talked about this earlier today. What do we see ourselves as being? We've got a lot going on around us. We don't know what's gonna happen, in Malacca, we don't know what's gonna happen in Pomona, we don't know what somebody might be looking at. And so at the end of the day, we have to look at, what do we want our end user to be? What do we want to appeal to here in Crescent City? And I think that'll be part of a visioning for this.
It will be. And if you look at towns, I was just thinking, I drove through Sanford recently,
And then I thought of Winter Garden and, other, even DeLand, where not too long ago, their historic buildings were just empty and it was a ghost town. What happens first is all that just gets busting at the seams. Then you start to see new construction, one here, there, and then a big project. So I think my feeling is that big site, other than if it were to develop incrementally, is gonna be the last to go in terms of we will have filled out every building and every space we got. There's just no more room and people wanna get in here, and then that spurs construction. But in the meanwhile, when there's, you can just renovate a building that's existing. I think that's really our mid-range goal, is that we're busting at every available space we've got. It's just in use, and they're getting clever with pop-ups and other things going on until finally somebody says, I'm gonna build a building, and I'll have tenants right off the bat, and then we begin to get construction. But it's it takes a lot of patience. It's a slow process.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I'm
Took a long time to get this way.
I'm encouraged because, I mean, just in the last week, I mean, I've met with 2 new homeowners. You also you're new, I mean, to the community, but they're making investments in some of our older homes. We've got over here on North Prospect, he's doing the same, but they've moved in. Diane, you've got new neighbors behind, and they fixed that house up, the other house, right there on Reed Street, they're moving in, they're fixing that house up. And, I mean, that to me is encouraging, that they're seeing something here that they want to be part of. And I think that's what we have to continue, Dan, is whatever we do, we want to create an environment where people want to be part of that environment. People want to be here, they want to enjoy what we offer, and want to be part of that environment. And I think as we go forward, to me, that would be the vision I have, is how do we accomplish that?
Yeah.
Yes, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, I have a couple. One is I would like to see conditions on the CRA where one person doesn't get $40,000, and spreads it around a little more, maybe a cap of 20 grand, where we could utilize more businesses and stuff to get it. I don't think that it should be utilized for a warehouse. I think it should be more utilized for a walk-in bistro, if you will, that will serve the community, not just one person in a warehouse. I think some of these conditions need to be done so it does spread out the wealth a little bit. We don't use up all the money in one spot. And I'm not gonna beat a dead horse to death. I'm just saying we used that earlier as a learning, or let's learn from it. How can we spread this out a little more where more businesses can benefit? And then we can look at bringing in other monies and stuff to help that. But, the other thing I want to look at as a person, I've been living here 3 years. It'll be 4 years in February. Not once has someone welcomed me to this town. I had a business that came here, it wasn't a welcome. I think when people move in here, the town or the city should say something or do something, a packet, a little thing, coupons with the businesses in town, somebody shows up. As a kid, when someone moved in a neighborhood, it was official, where they went through there and welcomed them in. And the new businesses are gonna be the same way. To have events and to get people in this town, you have to make it fun. They have to wanna come here. The biggest problem with the town is you're a finite ability for people to live in the city. This city is only so big. You're not gonna move in 100 more people here and build stuff inside the city limits that's here. We have to welcome, no you're not, there's not enough room. We have to welcome people like Walaka does. Walaka doesn't depend on everybody that lives in the city limits there. They depend on people in Crescent City going there to eat. They depend on people around surrounding area and Pomona to come in. That's what you have to make this, is a destination place. Because the city, the people that live here don't have a choice. They will patronize the local deal, but that's not enough to sustain the business. Walaka is a typical key of, there's more people come into Walaka that eat than there are live there. You have to make this a destination.
Yeah.
And doing so makes it fun for everybody who lives here. It's easier to get here. You know, when I was on the board of the airport in the land for 7 years, we started having events at the airport. All of a sudden, we had 12,000 people come in. All of a sudden, all the hangars got rented out because people wanted to bring their plane there. There's a 2-year waiting list for hangars there now, where there was 50 hangars that were open the day I walked in there. What I'm saying is, let's utilize the money to spread out and get businesses here and welcome folks that are here, and the outside community folks. They're not stepchildren. There's more people that buy insurance that don't live in this town down there that live outside the town, and we have to patronize them. Have to welcome them and make them feel like this is home. And I think the CRA is a good way to get the foot in the door, but I think you can only put a silk purse on this house here for so long before you have to get businesses in here to make it work. And you can have a nice park atmosphere that everybody would like to come here. But who's gonna keep it up and afford it, and where are you gonna do business at? The businesses has to come. If they don't, this is what you're gonna get from now on. And I agree, we gotta build it so they will come, to the aspect of, it's gotta be where if I'm a business guy and a barbecue guy and I want to rent that building, I gotta wanna come here. But my second thing that I'm gonna look at is, can I sustain my business here when I get started? Can I make it work? Can I take all the money I've saved the last 50 years and put in this thing and be prosperous? And I think that's the one thing that I've noticed in Crescent City is it's really not a welcoming place. I have been here for 4 years in February. The new people that come in are welcomed by their neighbors.
We have a ribbon cutting
It's not
program now.
recruiting new businesses and do stuff. We should have an open thing, job fair for new businesses come to Crescent City and see what building you want to pick out. We're not doing it. And I think the CRA may be the place to do that.
Okay, Commissioner DeVito, do you have some comments?
I do.
I'm gonna open it up for public comment.
Yeah, I think we've heard some great ideas here, and I'm sorry Commissioner Burton's not in the room right now because she had great ideas. She mentioned satellite education facility. One thing that most prosperous communities have is some kind of cultural amenities. I talked to St. John's College 4 years ago, and that didn't really go anywhere, but I think we are, with our average age is 52, both for the young and the old, for continuing education, for leisure education. I think it would be fantastic to have a satellite educational institution here. One thing, Commissioner Bailey is new to Crescent City. When he says you're not going to get any more people living here, we don't have room. Actually, that's not really the case. We still don't have 1,700 population. We used to have somewhere between 1,800 and 2,000 people.
You had over 3,000.
Yeah, I was gonna
A
say.
long time ago, there was over, I think there was over 3,000.
Well,
10 years ago.
regardless, we are well below our maximum population. We have lots that used to have houses. We have houses that need to be fixed up and occupied, and we have buildable lots in quite a bit of the city. So we can grow our population, and Mayor has talked about that. I think the main thing is we have some ideas. I think our plan needs the new ideas. It's not enough. And we don't have to ask the city manager if we can do something. We're the CRA board. If we want to bring ideas forward, I think that is very helpful, and I particularly like the idea because as the board, we are responsible, that we should get more detailed monthly updates.
Please step out, Commissioner Bird.
I'm sorry, this person normally doesn't call me.
Okay, I'm sorry, can you step out and take it? Thank you.
Sorry, I thought we were having radio or something. Anyway, so I think that we can improve this plan. I think we can improve what Main Street does, and as well, I think it's critical that we figure out how to leverage private investment. And as well, Charles, I wanted to ask you, there's something in the Main Street application that where we agreed to apply for a small something grant. I couldn't find it. But
Small cities matching grant, the historical preservation.
I think so.
That's the one where we no longer have to meet the match. We get-
Right.
We get
But
up to $50,000.
So we agreed to do that. We've also been talking for years, I know in our plan, there's this picture of A. Philip Randolph with the AME Church. That's been talked about for years. The historic preservation grant deadlines are April 1st to June 1st of this year. And so now's the time. This is the window to apply for these grants. And that's one reason I wanted us to put a little bit of money towards someone on contract to do grants that weren't CDBG or FERDAP. Because there's grants out there. And the grant that we voted to apply for last year for the New Moon Lodge, and then we didn't apply for it, 118 organizations throughout Florida received a total of $60 million. And some churches and nonprofits and cities received between $500,000 and $1 million. I mean, the New Moon Lodge could have been done. That was a one-time grant program. It's no longer in existence. But there are the small cities matching grants, and then I think there's the larger category, right? And so we would need to apply by June 1st. And there's money on the table, and we've had this has been in the CRA for years, and we've just never applied. So.
And I think with our new recognition, I mean, we got some significant recognition from Secretary Byrd, all over his website. I mean, he's just blasted our businesses, blasted things to do here in Crescent City. So that will, I think, help us, and even in the grant process, we know being a Main Street community will definitely help us. So Commissioner Banks.
Yeah, you know, I want to piggyback off of Commissioner Bailey because he got some good points. Myself, you know, I almost every Sunday I had to go to Wheelacker, or Fruitland, or down to D-Land to get a Sunday meal. There's no call for that. We need to push for restaurants. Instead of a hotel, we done tried all kind of different, I don't want to say tricks, but we done did all kind of things to try to get a hotel over there. And ain't gonna happen. If we do get something over there, that one out down there gonna close. It's the same way it was about McDonald's. McDonald's bought the land, they promised to come, but put McDonald's over there, when it's gonna close? We just ain't got the people. And you know, I'm gonna say this. We got a big zip code, 32112. And let me tell y'all something. I often hear to say that and that whether they stay out the city there. Yeah, they do. But they come by that Handaway, they buy gas, they shop the Winn-Dixie. That's tax. Tag off it. They keep that there. So many things. Even people enjoy town and Fruitland and all those different places. A lot of them people come to Crescent City and do their business. We got to understand that. I always had the negative talk about, well, they don't stay in the city limits. Well, they can't vote in the city limits. But the finance is sure comes into Crescent City, a lot of it. And so we need to keep that in mind too, while we're trying to build the population in the town. Everybody don't want to live in the city, but they stay outside the city. But we really need some eating joints. I don't want to use that type of word in the Crescent City when you get out of church or wherever you go in on Sunday. And you want a decent meal. Now, I ain't kicking 3 Bananas, I ain't kicking the other place right there on the corner. I ain't kicking that good. but we need some more places to eat. In a single plate, and I can remember when we had somebody, we could buy some fried chicken. You gotta go over to East Palaka to buy fried chicken. If you don't go to Winn-Dixie. Now, that's facts. What do we look at it like that? And I think while we're working on it, but I think we're on the right track. See, I'm alone, I ain't just drifted in there, I was born in here. And I know where we had most stores in Crescent City, clothes stores. I bought suits from Thomas Hill Style Shop, Leon McKenna, Place Social. You can't go in Crescent City and buy nothing now, but they're khaki if you can buy that. So, you know, it's just certain things that I think we as commissioners need to try to push to get done and get the right funds to try to lure some businesses in here. I agree. I really do.
Thank you. With that, I'm going to go ahead at this time and open up public comment. So anybody that has any public comment, please come forward. State your name if you would and your address, and Karen will start the clock in 3 minutes.
Diane Sykes, 34 Chestnut Street. I was a member on the CRA Advisory Board for a couple of years, and there were multiple things that we did. There was a hotel feasibility analysis done by a lady, I think she was from Deland, and she used the comps that she used were from Palatka and from Deland, and neither one of those cities are comparable to Crescent City, but she determined based on those comps that it was feasible to put a hotel in that corner. Provided, and here's the kicker, provided that it was marketed right. I was also a member of the Community Center Working Group for a year, where we evaluated different, because it was determined based on a study that we had that brought people in for 3 different meetings to determine what this community needed. And what was determined was that we needed a community center. Community center, like Ms. Burton was talking about, a place where you could take educational classes, where seniors could meet, where kids could meet for different functions. It could also be rented out as a bridal shower area or whatever. And 3 different sites were proposed. We proposed using Market Square. At the time it had a building on it, revamping that building, or tearing down the building and building it from scratch. And Joe Santa was the mayor at that point, and he determined that both of those options were too expensive. We also presented using the building at the marina. And at the time, someone wanted to buy that building and open a bait and tackle shop, which would have been a perfect business for that, for their area at the marina. So Joe said, oh, so we can't use that building because we're gonna sell it for a boat and tackle shop. So after a year's worth of analysis, all of the suggestions that were put forth were shot down. But I still do think that we do need a community center, and I think having a community center would draw people. They'd say, oh wow, Crescent City has a community center. Look at the groups that meet there. I just think that that would be a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else with public comment? I know you come forward, don't be shy. This is a workshop. There's hardly anybody in the audience. If you have something to say, come on, this is the time to do it. Now, it is being broadcasted across the nation. I just
My name is Rachel McKenzie, and I live at 25 South Lake Street. And so we are right next to the water plant. And when I look at some of your pictures there, it was really terrifying to me. We live right next to the fence, and there's going to be people there. And our garage is, I don't know, 4 feet off the street. It was permitted, we bought it that way. And there's trees planted for there, so that's why I'm here. I wanted to hear if that is a firm plan or if that is a proposed plan. And I get from you it's kind of proposed. And when I look at your nature walk, you know, there's a family of alligators that lives right there. mom and daddy and babies, and we watch them all the time. And there's black snakes, and we've named them all. I know that's crazy.
Moccasins too. Yeah.
The black snakes got rid of the moccasins that were kind of right there in the corner. But, you know, we are new here in town, and we really do like it a lot. We came from Atlanta. I love one stoplight. And my husband loves that the lakes aren't drying up, that they actually have water in them. And we really like it here. But I would hate, you know, I don't like the idea of people walking right there, scaring the alligators and the things that people are scared of. So that's what I came to ask questions about. I'm really glad that it's not set in stone.
Yeah, we'll see if it survives the next planning process.
So what, do we come in and talk to you about it?
Well, we'll hold charrettes, that's probably where that came from. A lot of people said, we need a boardwalk on the lake, and so the consultants take in all that information and they'll do sketches like this. And people, yeah, so that came out of a consensus process, like, yeah, we should let people go see the old jail and you could walk out on the lake and then walk their way back. And so it was a community process, and the update of the plan will be the same thing. So you'll be able to express your concerns.
And then say what, because we live right there, we look at it every day. Of course, we have a better way in our head that it would look better and, you know, cost less money for the city. Do we ever tell you what we think, or?
Yeah, it'll be part of that process. And also we'll look at, you know, if you look at that, your street is probably not enough width for what's proposed in the plan. I don't think they considered the constraint to the right of way and so forth. So I think it was probably graduate students put that plan together. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I can tell that whoever put the plan together had not ever been here and driven down the street, because there's no way it would work.
Mayor, if I could, Charles, that was all from University of Florida. The public never said they wanted any of that stuff.
There were no public charrettes.
So y'all just adopted it once they gave you the plan?
Pretty
the
much.
CRA adopted it?
It was done in a PowerPoint like this, and nobody discussed those.
There'll be charrettes.
There will definitely be public input.
I'm just saying,
There should have been public,
Well,
yeah.
so access to the old jail would be very feasible from Sunrise Park, and we wouldn't have to put as much fencing to keep people out of water playing, because there's already fencing on the other side, things like that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming today. We appreciate it, and sitting through all of this. We appreciate that.
Charles, some of the things on the CRA that we were talking about, fuel and bait shop, is the city considered running these, or is this something we want to bring in? But
I don't think it ever got that far. I don't know what it was in 2018, but nobody's talked about it since I've been here. Other than the fact that we don't have bait shop.
I want to finish public speaking.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just.
Lisa Roddenberry, 229 South Prospect Street. When I moved here, I was welcomed by several people, but I also felt like the city didn't know the new people came in. So CCBC developed a welcome letter, and we were going to do a packet. I had dropped the ball because I had some issues. But if there's a way to get information about new people moving in, it negates the problem of having to print it and you can email it. And that's where I dropped the ball on it. So the letter is already ready. I didn't go about doing the coupons and stuff. We were going to do a welcome basket, but it's up to what we want to do with it as to what can happen with that welcome letter. But it was an idea that we had kicked around a year and a half ago. And I brought it part of the way, but I didn't finish. So it's already ready to go. So that's all I wanted to say.
And that would handle it from, I mean, if we have some civic groups that would be willing to do that, to handle it from a residential standpoint. I know Christina's doing it from a business standpoint, and working with them and the partnership, and Christina working with them, just like we just had the ribbon cutting down here for Cassie's. You know, and we had the ribbon cutting for down at the Mystic Bistro and Nature Symphony. So at that point, you know, those new businesses, you know, but from a residential standpoint, yeah, we do need to we need to work on that, so.
I think the way to get the names and stuff are, new people are always looking, getting electric and gas service. That's pretty cut and dry, where the city can find out where
New water service, yeah.
new water service, and hey, that's even outside the city limits type thing, you know? So, be able to get those.
So with that, if there's no further discussion, I think this workshop is.
Well, do you want to switch to a deadline-driven grants program with a maximum award and, my recommendation would be to, in future, it'd be like on August 1st, give us 2 months to make sure the application was accurate and complete. Meanwhile, we've got some funds left this year. We could bring you, we could set a date like by June 1st, and then we need a couple months probably to vet them. At some point, we bring you the pile to spin down the remaining funds. And then this first year, the next deadline will be right in August, so the next fiscal, or October 1 funds becoming available. If you want to give me that, just through consensus, I'll come back to you with a schedule to finish out this year, and then a proposed grant schedule for the future.
Well, I think we need to change our grant program to do all the things that have been discussed, and to certainly, I think one thing that was mentioned and highlighted, it has to be a carrot. I don't think we should be giving a grant unless it's building stabilization, and even then, for someone who does not intend to pursue some kind of business activity there.
So you're not in favor of just getting the building stock ready for somebody? It needs to be somebody in particular.
I would, well, given that we have limited funds, that would seem to make sense. I mean, there are different purposes. I think we need to narrow it down and make it more of an incentive, given that the funds are limited.
Well, I could revise the guidelines with kind of a list you'll have to choose from. You'll have to decide by a vote, do we want to limit it? And if so, at what number? Do we want it to be only occupied, or like you have to end up with a certificate of occupancy when we're done with the process? Does it have to be a tenant or no? Or, I'll give you a list of, here's some restrictions we could put on the grant. You guys, you'll have to kind of pick and choose and vote what the majority of you want in that program. I'll certainly recommend some of them to you.
Okay, I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
The current program is a $1,500 cap, 50% match. It has some restrictions on it as well. I'll look at that and maybe start from there and modify what we have, bring it back to you.
Now, let me ask you this. Let's say that we have Western Auto come in and says, I want this building down here, and if you guys will build it out, we'll sign a 10-year lease. We know we don't have the funds in there, but what about an ARPA type thing to transfer funds on a case-by-case basis that would look at something like that, just like an O'Reilly that came in or said, something that came down and said, hey, look, we know we don't have $40,000 in this building, but if we put $150 in to build out, and this guy sends a 10-year lease, and they either have to pay it back if he moves or not, that we could get, I was, for a better word, emergency funds to bring in a business. And I'm all about bringing in a business. We can put an awning on something of somebody somewhere, and that's great, but I can't see if we can't get businesses in here, we're dressing up an empty building.
We can do that up to we have a deadline to spend those funds, and it's moved so many times, I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head, but we can have that remaining ARPA funds for that purpose on an as needed, up until when we're getting near the end, we're gonna have to spend them before the deadline, so that we might put ourselves in a corner where we've got $150,000.
And then we lose out on the money.
And we've got to spend it in 2 months, or
Is this a spend it or we lose it thing?
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
And I wish I could remember what the new deadline is, but it's still over a year away, I believe.
I thought it was April of 2024, maybe they've moved it further out, they may have moved it further out, but
But
that's
in the
fine.
meanwhile,
could, for the next 6 to 8, 10 months, you know, be a feasible
Yeah, we got.
pot of money. If we had a company that said, hey, what have you got for me if I move in here with 10 jobs, and can you fix this building for me or something? And that wouldn't have to be in a CRA, actually, to use those funds, it could be anywhere in the city.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, that was me that brought that up a couple of weeks ago. I have a question about the applying for the grants. I mean, are we going to apply for a historic preservation grant this year?
Well, we have to figure out what would we spend the money on. We need a project, and we write the grant to.
Right, but haven't we obligated ourselves to apply for the small matching grant?
I don't think we've obligated ourselves.
Didn't we say we would in the Main Street application?
I'll have to look.
I think we did.
Yeah.
But it's there, there's money, we have need.
We have to define the need. It's up to $50,000, so if we want to update the survey or hire somebody to propose changes, or, you know, we have to figure out what we spend the money on, and then we fill out the application.
I mean, to me, it's a matter of whittling it down.
Yeah, and those are mostly planning grants. The $50,000 is, you know, with paperwork, but it doesn't really, they usually work on buildings with that. That's what the larger grants are for.
Right, and that's the same deadline for the larger grant.
And that was a suggestion, you know, when we talked about this before, we need that money, and that's what I was thinking it would be, and I had made that suggestion, some of the ARPA funds, that maybe we do it one time, and have them come in, bring their application, we have a deadline, and then we sort it out that way.
So announce it like a program, like you've got a business you want to
Just
bring to
as
the
a
city.
one, it's kind of a one-time opportunity, and new businesses, you know, they could do the same thing, they could, if they've secured a building, or if they're in the process of securing a building. I don't know, it's something that, you know, we talked about that, but we could do something with that, so I think we have some options. Okay, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close the workshop out.